I think we are back. We are back after the break, and let me resume. So, what I'm trying to tell you is that nativism simply means being connected to your roots, simply means being connected to your socio-political cultural space. Now, how many spaces and how many lands are there? Multiple lands, multiple socio-political, and cultural spaces which you will inhabit. Now, I'll give you an example. For example, the example I was talking about, when the West, and what nativism also tries to do, why as a strategy is it is very important, because whatever foreign influences are in terms of language, in terms of political ideologies and so many things, it does not accept the foreign influence as it is. It always tries to negotiate it. It always tries to make it fit for itself. And that is the wonderful thing about nativism. Nemade and company, or any nativist, is not of the opinion that we should not borrow anything from the other cultures. Any culture which is of this view, any culture which thinks that it should it any culture which believes that it is self-sufficient is bound to die. But the problem is that when you actually borrow something from other cultures, on what terms are you borrowing it? Because, culture, as we know, is a political vehicle. Cultures always try to dominate one another.
অ্যাক্টিভিটি করতে পারে ঠিক আছে
Hello? Hello. Cultures always try to dominate one another. And so I was talking about that Amir Khusro's wonderful example. Amir Khusro, he was a son of a Turk and an Indian mother, and he was writing in what was called as Hindavi. Hindavi, because he was writing for his own constituency. He was not thinking about internationalism, or let us say national reputation. And that is why there was a great deal of criticism of his poetry and his whatever he was writing. And he was told that, why don't you use Arabic, or why don't you use, let us say, Persian? And Khusro has a very important thing to say about this. Khusro says, Turk Hindustaniyam man Hindavi goyam jawab. It means that I am a Turk, I am a Turk, but I am a Hindustani Turk. And that is why I always will talk in Hindavi. Shakare Misri Nadaram Kaja Arab Goyam Sukhan. And that is why my language may not have Misri. Misri means sugar of Arabic and Persian. It may be very rough language, but I will always use it. Now, this kind of deliberate political position, it tries to save that constituency which might otherwise not survive in political, let us say, storm, or the cultural storm. Globalization and colonialism have been those two political and cultural storms which are, blowing us away. And what nativism tries to tell us, by being connected to our roots, by being connected to our socio-political cultural spaces, we may be able to stand on our own, and we may be able to negotiate the epistemological challenges which are put forward by, let us say, globalization and colonialism. That is why nativism is such an important thing. There is a very interesting story. One of the when Ghalib was writing his divan and all, somehow some of his shares were translated into English, and Engels, who knew English very well, he brought it to the notice of Marx. Marx, after reading that English translation, was taken away by the beauty of that thought. And so he wrote a letter. That letter is available. He wrote a letter to Ghalib, and he said that, why you should read Das Kapital. Ghalib wrote back that, and he said that you should instead read Upanishads. Now, what is going on there? What is going on here is that Marx is a very important philosopher, but as long as we are not able to stand on our own, we won't be able to contribute anything significantly to this global cultural, literary, political scene. And that is why sometimes cultures which are dominated, they need to take this kind of a stand. When you read Nemade's nativism, at times you think that Nemade is deliberately taking very violent position. Now, this kind of violent position is required. It is a strategy. It is not some kind of epistemological mistake. Now, why is it required? Because if you do not take that kind of a stand, you will be, raised to the ground by these very big forces which are simply beyond your control. So that is why. And a person like Gandhi, when he wrote that famous booklet called Hind Swaraj in 1909, even at that time, a person, very humble person like Gandhi could say that Indian civilization is far better than other civilizations. Now, is Gandhi a fool? Does he really think that it is superior civilization? No. Gandhi realizes one thing, that Indian civilization has its own plus points, and it has its own demerits. But then why is he taking that position? He's taking that position because his lot is down and out. His lot is completely under that Western influence, and have started thinking that they are completely worthless. So that is why you need to make these people aware of what they are, what they were, what are their contributions, and what have been their failings. And once this population becomes aware of that, then we might be able to contribute something to the globe. Otherwise, globalization will simply become Americanization, and every other country will be, just like small part of America, culturally, socially, politically. Now, somebody might say that why should we not become Americans? What is so bad about being Americans? I'm not against Americans. What I am saying is that look at the look at nature, look at all these things. Things have been worthwhile only when there has been multiplicity, where only when there has been diversity. Now, when we talk about environment, we always say that diversity is very important. When we talk about nature, we always say that even mosquito is very important. In the same way, in global cultural polysystems, every single culture is important, every single language is important, every single culture, every single language, every single community has the same right to the world, and has same right to stand on its own. Now, they won't be able to stand on their own, because there are forces which are far bigger than that. And that is why, in order to survive, in order to do something, these cultures have some time to take this kind of, let us say, violent position. And Nemade is doing that by taking up this kind of a position. So that is all I had to say about revisiting Nemade's nativism. I think I have been able to clarify certain things. What I did was, first of all, I talked about what is nativism. Then I talked about why do we need nativism. I tried to locate Nemade in a particular intellectual tradition. And after that, I tried to look at our particular cultural scenario. Now, when I joined Pratap College, a very interesting thing happened. I was teaching my first class, and I was teaching Alexander Pope. And then somebody asked me a question, sir, what about Kalidas? Why are we not teaching Kalidas? Why are we not studying Kalidas? Now, that's a valid question. Now, uh, we people who work in English departments haven't asked this question to ourselves. Why do we teach one particular literary tradition? I'm not saying that we need to give up the entire British tradition. Something, I mean, Shakespeare, you just cannot give up on. There are other writers you just cannot give up on. But some of the secondary and even third-rate writers are considered greater than some of our writers. That is unfortunate thing to happen. And as we became an autonomous college, Pratap College, Amalner is now an autonomous college. We have designed our MA Part 1 syllabus in such a way. For example, we have some genre-based paper. For example, we have a paper called as World Literature Drama, where our students, and I'll give you the syllabus just for the first semester. In the first semester, our students are reading Oedipus, a Greek play, Shakuntal by Kalidas, an Indian play. They are reading Othello by Shakespeare. They are reading Doll's House by Ibsen. They are reading one play by African playwright. So now what has happened is, why did we do this? We did this because we want our students to get exposed to these different traditions, so that they will not say, or they will not come to the conclusion that the only Western tradition is the best tradition. Whatever best is in the Western tradition, we can always borrow it. We all remember that famous statement by Basi Mardekar. Basi Mardekar once upon a time said that Marathi Samiksha itki parapushta ahe, kiti pureshi parapushta nahi. Now, this is a very important paradoxical statement. We are so dependent on the West that we have not been able to create anything of our own. The purpose of cultural existence is to borrow from other cultures whatever is good with them, but on our terms, and give something in return to other cultures which they can also use. So what I'm trying to tell you is that because of colonialism and the challenges of globalization, we are being completely decimated. And now is the time to go back to our roots. Now is the time to go back to our intellectual traditions, and not going back to them blindly, but taking a critical overview of everything, and let us say expunging them of whatever was bad and retaining whatever is good, and so that we will be able to give something to the world in return. There is that very famous Urdu sher, चमन में इख्तलाते रंगो बू से ही बात बनती है. Means garden is garden only because only when there are multiple flowers and multiple smells. एक हम ही हम है तो क्या हम है, एक तुम ही तुम हो तो क्या तुम हो. So Nativism is a theory which tries to bring in that multiplicity, which tries to give some kind of strength to those cultures which are losing out, so that they can stand confidently in this global transaction, so that we can learn things from one another, and so that there will be multiplicity of cultures, voices, languages, and perspective, so that the entire human race is benefited of this. That is what I had to say. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you very much thank you very much, Vijay, for organizing this thing. Now the most important part begins, and that is question and answer. Thank you. Hello, Vijay. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, Vijay, where is the moderator?
Sir, ते कनेक्ट होतात एकच मिनिटात कनेक्ट.
Also connected.
Hello. I think as long as Viju doesn't, if Viju is not able to join us, somebody should take up the responsibility of, of moderating it. This is the most important session now, because whatever I had to say about Nemade, that was a rehash. Now, whatever I think of it and whatever the problems are, that can be discussed only in question and answers session.
Hello, Nitin.
It is open for
Yes,
now.
yes. I think Viju has joined us.
This is Jnandev.
Yeah.
Jnandev here.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Just a small question.
Yes.
You spoke about reinventing past and talking about it. Rather, not reinventing, but talking about the past and roots. But see, my experience is the generation that is born in 1980s and onwards, we have gone through a sea change in technology and social lifestyle. Now, I find myself uprooted, rather annihilated from the past that I have lived in. Do you really think that it is possible for us to represent the original traditions that our forefathers have lived through?
No, see, I mean,
is it possible?
Yeah. It's a wonderful question. Thank you very much. I was expecting this. Now, see what has happened is, is it possible to go back to the past? And I hope you remember Aniket here. He said that he used to say that it is simply impossible to go back because now we are very much Western. That is what he used to say. But now
Yes.
remember, my problem with this kind of argument is then this is a very status quoist argument, Nandev. And status quoist in the sense that whatever we find ourselves, whatever situation we find ourselves in, let us accept this situation. Now, nativism or Nemade or anybody, would say that this is a very dangerous position politically, any culture. Now, I'll give you a very interesting information. I met Professor Sheldon Pollock. Sheldon Pollock teaches Sanskrit at Columbia, and he'd come for one of the conferences of Forum on Contemporary Theory, and he told me a horrible story. He said that Chicago University wants to appoint anybody who knows South Indian languages very well, because A.K. Ramanujan used to be there, and now he's no more, and is passed in the 90s, and so they want to fill that position in. And Chicago University is not able to find one decent Indian scholar.
Exactly.
Can you imagine this? Now, my interest in nativism, Nandev, is that is not cultural chauvinism, that we were the best. That is nonsense. We were never the best. Nobody is best. Okay, but we had something very important to say. For example, the multiplicity, the diversity, and how have we managed diversity right from the days immemorial. Now the world, as it finds itself today, is what is the problem with the world today, that it is not able to manage with the diversity. Now see what is happening in America, George Floyd and company, what is happening in China, so these identities, these multiple identities, somehow political establishment is not able to manage it. Now here India has very something interesting to contribute to the world. Look at our history, the history which we learn, which we will critically learn. We will not just rely on whatever the British scholarship had to say. By going to the independent sources, by going to this kind of indigenous traditions, we will be able to find out something. So now this is very interesting thing which we can contribute, that this is how you manage multiplicities. This is how you manage the peaceful coexistence. We have had our own problems. It's not as if that we have a very clean past. We have had our problems, but we were never a genocidal civilization. In European situation and otherwise, what has happened is that if one particular sect came to the power, it tried to wipe out the other sect. And now that hasn't happened in Indian case. Even if it was ruled by, say, the Muslim polity, or let us say by a Hindu polity, and there are so many sects and there are so many identities to that. So I think if we say that this is a bit difficult and can we go back? We can always try. And as Beckett said that, try, fail, try better, fail better. So next time, I think we would be able to salvage. We will be able to salvage something,
See, the serious problem with Indian scholarship that I notice in the sense of history, I'm saying, that we often rely on, instead of searching for something, we try to imagine, as it is an indistinct quality of historical research. We try to imagine, but sometimes we need to have some logic, that when I imagined this thing particularly in history, I had these things connected to it, and on the basis of those, I'm making this statement. It is absent in historical research in India particularly. And that is why I asked you this question, is it is really pathetic to say that I'm not able to go back to how the way in which my ancestors lived. And that creates a great predicament for me, that I have to search for my history or the cultural heritage through the books that have been written by others, which most of the times are illogical in some sense. And mostly the European scholars, they speak about the things that all the problematic things. I mean, the caste system and the dominance of Brahmins and a particular culture that was in practice in a particular region. They think about the visitors that India had, and they have written about the India that they visited, the places they visited. The rest of the places, they remain anonymous, because the real culture, the real life that we find even today, we find it only in the rural areas.
Yeah.
But the families like yours and mine, now we have left our villages and now migrated to some nearer, better, better so-called city, and we are living, staying there, and we are adopting the pseudo European culture. Though we, because of the traditions, we are sticking back to all our festivals and all the things that are in practice, but the nature has certainly changed. The kind of celebrations we used to have in schools, now they are nowhere seen. Even in the villages, they are absent. And that is the problem. Why I had this question in mind.
Sure.
Okay,
I mean,
let someone ask something else.
This is a wonderful observation, Nandev, but we basically are Aniket's children, So I'll keep going back to him again and again, because this is a constant point of debate between him and me.
Me.
Yes, so he had a very interesting way of putting this. Okay, fine, let people other ask question, otherwise it will just become a conversation between
Hello,
us.
am I
We will have
audible?
discussion some other time.
Next question is
Hello.
Ram Dongre, sir.
Hello.
Shriram.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Nitin sir.
Yeah, Shriram, good to see you after so many years.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for very insightful presentation.
Shriram, you're not audible.
I faced my. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, Shriram. Yeah. Now.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much for such an insightful presentation. I really I'm impressed. I have recently worked on Nemade.
Shriram, voice is breaking. Maybe there's some problem with your connectivity, Shriram.
And I'm very happy that the things that I had in mind you present. Yes. Can you hear? Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Shriram. Shriram,
Can you hear
there's
me
problem
now?
with your connectivity, maybe.
I think there is some problem in range.
Okay,
Next
we will
question.
get back to you after some time.
Sir. Next question is
The next
Sachin
question
Mane,
is, I
sir.
think, by Sachin Mane, sir.
Sachin Mane, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Please.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask?
Hello. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. First of all, I would like to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to ask you my question. Frankly to say, sir, I've never read Nemade. But from your address, it seems that Nemade is very compatible with Gandhian thoughts to say local means global plus local. But he accepted the Jnanapit from the BJP government that actually endorses very conservative nativism. So what's your take on this?
Now, I'm not an advocate for Nemade, but I would still like to answer this question. Now, Jnanapit is not given by Indian government, and Jnanapit is given by Sahitya Akademi, And Sahitya Academy is a very autonomous, it's an autonomous body. In fact, almost as good as private body. It's established by SK Desai and company. That's why we need to understand that one particular thing. Yes. And now what happened? Because I know Nemade personally, so I know this information. When the committee declared that he will be given, this Jnanapith, and that was the 50th Jnanapith. So the committee had already, the organizers of that committee had already talked to the Prime Minister. Now, please remember, Prime Minister, I may have my own problems with Mr. Modi and his policies, but when the organizers had invited him, being the Prime Minister of India, it would have been very improper on the part of Nemade not to say that, I will not accept this. In fact, he told the committee, in his very interesting Hindi, he said that आप मुझे वो ज्ञानपीठ दे रहे हो लेकिन वो प्राइम मिनिस्टर एक अच्छे हिंदू को ये देंगे क्या? Okay, that is what he said. So that is the reason why he went and he accepted this. This is number one. And number two is, far more important reason is, instead of this kind of behavior, we should just pay attention to what Nemade has to say through his writings and his novelistic work, because that is far more important than this kind of these gestures. Sometimes courtesy demands that you have to inhabit certain paradoxes. That is my answer to this question. Thank you.
Next question is Sachin Mane, sir.
Yes. Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good noon, sir. I'm Sachin Mane from SGM College, Karad.
Yes.
I directly come to the question, sir. Do you think that nativism is one of the ways to establish an identity? Is that I can say so?
Yes, it is. I would say that it is a very, I would say, strategical, deliberate attempt of stamping your authority. Because now, why do you take this position? You take this position because you are epistemologically, culturally, your identity has been completely destroyed, and that is why you need to take this kind of violent position. Sometimes it may be, epistemologically not consistent. Sometimes politically it is dangerous. Now, please remember, nativism has a great potential to be to be appropriated by the right-wing politics. And some of the critics like Masu Patil and others, they have actually said this in print that this looks like RSS. But I would say that then the Masu Patil and company haven't read that stuff very carefully. If you look at that stuff carefully, you would say that Nemades, the theory of nativism is very decentralized. He would say that whatever cultural political space you inhabit, you talk about that. Your attachment is with that space, and he's dead against this kind of categories of nation, pan nation and pan culture. He's against that. So that is why I would say you are absolutely right to say that this is an attempt to assert your identity, number one. But we have to take into account two things. Why do you need to take this attempt? Because you have been robbed of so many things. That's why, number one. And number two is because you want to contribute something to the global cultural transactions.
Okay, thank you, sir. I have another one question.
I think let other people ask questions.
No, only one question, and I want to answer within 15 to 20 seconds.
Okay.
Yes, I will take yours. Actually, I have heard your deliberation, listened, and I am actually very grateful to you people, all of you, and specifically you, sir. But my one question is there, and one more question is there, that do you think, or can I say that identity, nativism, and regionalism, are these terms synonymous? Specifically, they work to establish particular identity, establish particular form of identity. Can I say all these things? Or
No, this is a very loaded question, and that is why we need to take into account these three categories separately and look at their dynamics. And I don't think that it can be answered in say 15 to 20 seconds. So,
Okay. Yes, okay.
this has opened the conversation. We'll be
Yes,
in touch.
actually.
We'll be talking about that.
Yes,
I
yes,
think
yes.
Dr.
Okay.
Kirti from Mumbai wants to ask something. She had joined us
Okay.
from Mumbai. So, Kirti, can
Thank
you
you. Thank
please
you so
go
much.
ahead with
Yeah,
your question?
yes,
Thank you.
Nitin.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Nitin, it was wonderful listening to you. I'm so, I don't know what to say. It was wonderful. I wish I could have joined your college, to pursue my MA once again. Anyways, coming to the things that came to my mind, number one is Decolonizing the Mind by Ngugi wa Thiong'o.
Yes.
Over there, Thiong'o has completely, refused to use English, and he, I guess it was Gikuyu. That was the
Gikyu.
language he chose. Yes, that was the language that he chose to even write this. To express theory or even express himself basically. And another thing is, I haven't really read Nemade, but Makaranda Paranjpe, Bhalchandra Nemade, and
Ganesh
GN
Devi.
Devi, Ganesh Devi. If we think about all of these three, GN Devi is doing wonderful work through his Bhasha Institute. What I want to say is, what are the practical implications of Nemade's work? Makaran Paranjpe has taken the native route to the US, I guess. I mean, I don't see him anywhere on the literary scene anymore. And Bhalchandra Nemade, I'm not aware of. So, I really hold GN Devi very high. I mean, I have very great regard for him because I have visited the Bhasha Institute, and yes, he is doing work on not only the literary front, but he's doing a lot of work there in terms of taking care of the medical needs of the people who stay there. I cannot recollect the name of the place. It's very interior in Gujarat. I visited there. Tehgad Institute. And those people are taken care of. They are provided with employment. The library is wonderful. But what has Bhalchandra Nemade done in these terms? Because end of the story is how useful is his work to people like us,
Sure.
So can you please throw light on that, Nitin?
Thank you for this wonderful question. You might have got a shock from subaltern studies to nativism. So anyway,
and also Nitin, also one more thing, Nandev Kale, what he asked about was history. I think he needs to read subaltern theory, because subaltern theory is all about alternative histories. And I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you for these wonderful questions. There are two aspects to your question. The first is similarity with Ngugi wa Thiong'o and his decolonizing the mind, and his deliberate attempt or his deliberate position that he will only write in Gikyu, not in English, and if the world wants to read him, his text will be translated by other people. Now, please remember one thing, when we talk about the African experience of colonialism and the Indian experience of colonialism, we have to agree to one thing. We have to accept one thing. We have to admit one thing, that the African experience of colonialism has been far more devastating than Indian. Because, in our case, it was intellectual colonization. In our case, it was political colonization. But in case of the Africans, it was genocide. Then, even religious colonialism, the conversion. If you look at the rate of conversion, the amount of religious conversion, you would see that in Africa, those tribes were completely decimated by missionaries. And that is why the reaction which came from Africa is more vocal, I would say. And because, Ngugi wa Thiong'o's name was actually James Thiong'o. He gave up on that name, because their complete way of life had been taken away from them by this process of colonialism. That is why their version of colonialism, anti-colonial thought is more strong. I would say it's stronger. I would say.
Right.
In 1960s, when he joined, he's also a professor of English, Macquarie University. He did his masters from Macquarie, and when he came back to Kenya, the first paper which he wrote was on the abolition of Department of English.
Zoom meeting.
Okay. Yes. So that was it, on the abolition of the English department. He said that English department should be abolished. Now, English department should be abolished means what? I mean, he said that because English literature has been the vehicle of colonialism, intellectual and cultural colonialism, that is why the centrality which is given to English tradition should be taken away. And let us have a department of literatures where we will accept whatever British literature is good for us. That is his way of doing. And please remember one thing, now he teaches at UCLA and he teaches there, he writes in English and so many things. So that's one thing. Secondly, the question which you asked was, what is Nemade's contribution? Now, Nemade's contribution, I would say, Dr. Kirti, is, our cultural field has many dimensions. For example, there is direct activism, there are linguistic activism, there is cultural activism. There are so many kinds of activism. So what Nemade has taken up as a role is, he's produced criticism. For example, his brilliant article on Marathi Kadambari, Prerna Ani Swarup. Then some wonderful articles. Plus, he has always asked people to write in our own languages. So he's whenever he has worked on Sahitya Academy, he has always seen to it that this kind of practice takes root. So some people have to take up certain roles, I would say, and that is why he has taken up a role of a conscience raiser, I would say, and that is why through his writings, through his novels, through his speeches, through his work for Marathi language, and remember that is something very important. Professor Narke recently wrote a Facebook post when Nemade's birthday was celebrated. He said that there was a committee, Marathi language was going to get the status of classical Indian language. Nemade was dead against that proposition because some people said that only Pune Marathi should be given the status of classical Marathi language. Nemade said that if you are going to take into account all the varieties of Marathi which are spoken throughout Maharashtra and even in Tanjavur and other places, then and only then it will be, as a composite linguistic entity, it could become the classical language. So he actually saw to it. So there has been a kind of activism he has engaged in. The only thing is that it is not evident. It's through, let us say, creative and other purposes. He's been doing that. And he's been very important in that regard, I
Hello,
would say.
Nitin sir. Hello.
Yes.
Thank you, Nitin,
Thank you,
Nitin, for enlightening me on this, because I think my perspective was very limited. Thank you once again.
Hello.
Thank you so much.
हॅलो हा नितीन सर, आपला आहे ना सेकंड ब्रेक होणार आहे. 1च मिनिट राहिलेला आहे. अजून बऱ्याच जणांना प्रश्न विचारायचे, तर जर मीटिंग डिस्कनेक्ट झाली तर पुन्हा लगेच लॉग इन व्हा सर्वांनी. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन आहे प्रफुल सर. प्रफुल सर.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Your question.
Yes,
Am I
yes,
audible?
you're audible. Yes, you're audible.
Yeah. Good morning, Dr. Patil sir. It was a nice presentation. I am a friend of Vijay Gadge. We are friends from 2017. He has introduced you to me and said a lot about you. It was really a beautiful presentation. I would like to ask two questions. One is in favor of nativism, and the other is opposite to nativism. The first question is, I have recently read some article which was a critique of nativism. It said Bhalchandra Nemade is self-contradictory at some places. He further said that social realism is a European concept which was used in